Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus, and today I'm proud to bring you Bob Vosseller. Greetings, Bob.
Greetings. It's great to see you. And I know we didn't get together last month, so happy belated New Year.
And to you as well. I've missed you, and I'm looking forward to tonight's show. As always, you have an excellent guest with a lot of excellent things to say, so I'll be here if you need me.
Thank you. Well, of course, we're going right into, in celebration of Star Trek's 60th year, the subject of Star Trek, which, of course, we recently had the premiere of Star Trek Starfleet Academy. And, we might touch on that a little bit later. But my guest tonight is Stephen Lance, film and television character, actor, voice talent, recording artist, author, humorist, and so much more. It would take me all night just to go through all his credits. But he's got an interesting project that he's been working on that is kind of a revival of something that he was involved with in the past. And I can't wait for him to talk about it and a bunch of other subjects that he's going to talk about. So, Steve, it's great to see you, and as always, and you always bring something new to the package, and tell us what you've been working on. What's your latest project here?
Oh, hello, Bob and Hercules. Great to see you again. Thanks for having me back, fellas. Uh, the biggest project that I'm working on here in 2026, Bob, is actually a project from 1975.
Yeah, little
Now,
nostalgia,
little
but
nostalgia. So you talked already about it's the 60th anniversary of Star Trek, and I talked to my people. I have people, Bob. I talked to my people and said, "What can we do for the 60th anniversary?" And they've actually been after me. My publicist Lisa, who you know, has been after me for a long time that I need to revive something. And what is that? So if you want to get to that later, why don't you ask me some questions how I got into Star Trek, and then we'll lead up to that big reveal.
okay,
The big reveal.
of course. I mean, you have been in, a big part of Star Trek's history and helping to keep it alive through being a host of Star Trek conventions, which I know you had a lot of adventures with that alone. So, you could touch on that a little bit to start with and what that led to the exciting adventure that you had later on when Star Trek, the motion picture, came together and brought the Enterprise crew back on the bridge and beyond.
Well, it started out as a kid watching television. And one day I came downstairs and my dad was watching this TV show. And there's a lot of color TV was new back then. So the colors were all primary, like a gold shirt, like the one you're wearing, and bright
Hmm.
red, yeah, bright red and blue. And it was very pretty to look at on the NBC RCA television set that we had. And I asked my dad what he was watching, and he turned it in the middle, wasn't sure. And I'm looking at it, and I see the bridge, it's your bridge that you're sitting on there now.
Yep.
And there's a bunch of but I know it looks great. There's a bunch of people. There's a bunch of people talking to each other, and one of these guys is wearing the bangs. He's got his hair cut, in bangs, and he's got the pointed ears, and his eyebrows are pointed down. I'm like 12 years old, folks. I'm watching this, and I'm looking at this guy, and he looks mean, Bob. He looks mean,
A
and
little satanic,
yeah, he looks at Tom. Well, that was their problem earlier, but he's got the Betty Page haircut and pointed ears, and he looks mean. And I asked my dad, "Is he good?" And my dad hadn't been watching it long enough, but he says, "Yeah, I think so." I said, "He looks mean, but everybody seems to be talking nicely to him," and I couldn't figure that out. And of course, I got hooked. It was 8 years later only from that point where I went to a convention, the second one, 1973, because I'm a very old man, as you can tell, folks. In 1973 convention, and it was a lot of fun, and I got to meet some of the people. The first person that I met was Mr. Sulu, and I went up to him. I
Oh
didn't know how
my.
I didn't know how to pronounce their names, And I go, nice to meet you, Mr. Uh, Takai, because that's the way the spelling looks.
Mhm.
And George shook my hand and said, it's a TK. And like, okay. And that was my first introduction to Star Trek. And he was wonderful. And at that convention, they had a talent show. They also had a costume show. I was going, if anybody has been to a parochial school, I went to the Ranney School for high school, which is in Tinton Falls, New Jersey. We're talking jacket and tie, blue blazer, blue tie, gray slacks, every day. And Barry and I went to school together. We were at this point seniors working on the school paper and had no idea what to wear. So we wore our jacket and tie and gray pants, and we walked up there. And people are green and blue and Andorians and all the wonderful colors of the Star Trek aliens are around us, and we're there with a
Love
jacket and
it.
tie. Yeah, we're there with a jacket and tie. So they had a costume ball, which we looked down at ourselves and go, we're not gonna be able to enter the costume ball. Now I was thinking if it had been a Hawaii Five-O convention, I could have gone as McGarrett, but it didn't happen that way. So we didn't enter the costume ball. And then they said, when we have a talent show coming up next. This is 1973. And Barry said, why don't you do that stuff you do at the lunch table? I started already at lunch in high school doing the voices like I just did Mr. Sulu and Mr. Scott. I can't do a thing about it. Out of the engine going to blow. William Shatner, his hesitation. I always loved the way, and I love Bill, by the way. He's a great actor, and I'll tell you in a moment from the Star Trek The Motion Picture, one of the best pieces of acting that I have ever seen. And he doesn't say a word, and I'll tell you about that after. But I'm doing this hesitation. If we, and that was the name of the routine that I had developed. And Barry said, why don't you get up and do that thing that you do at lunch? Well, I didn't really have a stand in front of the brick wall routine. It was just funny lines that I would throw out in between our peanut butter and jelly and ham sandwiches. So I got up there and I remembered some of the things that I had said. And I'm putting out some lines and they're laughing. And I'm making other stuff up and they're still laughing. And I remember, have you ever had your foot fall asleep on you? Your leg falls asleep and you're sitting in the chair wrong. You know that tingly
Yeah.
feeling that you get that the needles and pins in the leg?
Mm.
Imagine your whole body feeling like that. My entire body that's how scared I was.
Oh
And
gosh.
and on top of that, as they were laughing, it was like one of those TV show things where you heard the ha 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 ha. It was surreal. It was surreal. I knew I was saying words. They seemed to be responding, but I was like that far away from myself. It was fascinating. There's a word for you. There's a word for it. So I keep making up stuff, and they're laughing until I ran out of things to say. I said, "Hey, thank you very much. I'll see you. Bye." And I get off the stage, and there's a lady in charge, and I go, "I won, right? I won." And she said, "No, I'm sorry, we had to disqualify you." I said, "What do you mean? I was killing out there." She
Yeah.
she said she said it was a 3-minute time limit for the talent show, and you
Um,
went 6 minutes. I
uh,
So I went over time. I said, I'm a senior in high school. I'm pretty, I'm already an adult. I go, so why didn't you stop me? She said, because you were killing out there. I
yeah.
said, I said, what? She says, these people that you see paid $6 to come to this convention, and
Six
everybody
dollars.
and every and
What
everybody
do you
else.
think about it now?
I know. You think it's $6 to get in, and I got in for free because we were covering it for the school paper. So we actually had school passes for the school newspaper. So I didn't even have to lay out the $6, Barry.
Always use the press card. Yep.
I always used a press card. So I said, "Well, why did you stop me?" She says, "Well, I was killing out there." She says, "Well, we didn't stop you because you're killing out there." So I said, "Look, I can't give you the prize because there'll be pandemonium here in the hall because you did go over. But how about if we have you on the program next year?" And I said, "Oh, that's great. Till I want to wear one of those guest ribbons. I'm showing you. It's like a guest ribbon that you wear. and it says it's it hangs on your shirt like that, and it says guest on it, and everybody will know that I'm a guest at the Star Trek
Yes.
convention. I was so excited. So I I said now a year goes by to 1974 convention. And I go to the convention and I show her the letter that she had sent me, and she remembered who I was, and she's going to put me on stage. And I got my guest badge, which I was real excited about. And I, hung out at the convention, did my if we routine, which we'll talk about, the comedy routine, that was polished a lot more from when I had did it a year ago. It actually was honed down and jokes written so that it was actually a stand in front of the brick wall routine. So I started seeing the celebrities that were there, and then some of the other guests. The other guests might have been a writer who wrote a book about Star Trek, Sandra Marshak, and people like that, and they had guest ribbons. But Gene Roddenberry didn't have a guest ribbon. When George Takei walked in, he didn't have a guest ribbon. And then I realized that to really get ahead in my career, I don't need a guest ribbon. I need to get no ribbon so everyone knows who I am. So that was the first movement in my career when I learned that as cool as his little ribbon was that said guest, it was cooler to not have one. So I I did I did my routine, which is titled If We, and we'll talk about that. And they liked me very much. And they said, we'd like to have you back next year, 1975 convention. And I said, that would be great. Am I going to get paid now? They said, no, we can't pay you. I said, okay, now I'm negotiating because I'm a freshman in college, big shot. I said, okay, you can't pay me, but then I want everybody, all your listeners, and when you go to a con, there are multiple things happening in different rooms. You've got the art exhibit in one room. You've got another room where the makeup artist might be talking, Fred B. Phillips. Another room, maybe William Tice, Bill Tice is talking about costumes. And then there's the dealer's room where you can buy those rubbery pointed ears and all the Russian word I think is chachka, all the memorabilia that you can find in the dealer's room. So the big room is where the main stars get introduced. And they're on stage, they're introduced by a master of ceremonies. All the news media is there, newspapers, radio, television. And I was, I wanted to be in this business, Bob, that I'm in this business. I'm still excited every day. I get up and go, I have to go to a studio today. I can't believe that as a kid growing up wanting to be in a studio. So they said, okay, I want to be in the big room on the big stage, introduced by the master of ceremonies, because that would get me we used to call it in the old days, ink. Now I guess you'd call it ones and zeros. Now you'd call it ones and zeros, right? But back then it was ink, which means the ink for a newspaper. So I said, okay, great. I'm not going to be paid, but I'll be in the big room, introduced by the master of ceremonies, and then I could really kick my career off. About 2 weeks before the show, I get a phone call from the director, Al Schuster. And he says, Steve, there's going to be a change. I said, what's that, Al? He said, you're not going to be introduced by the master of ceremonies. I said, Al, that was the deal. I'm not getting paid. I have to get the ticket to New York. No, wait. Chris Rush, the comedian who was going to host the convention, got cold feet. He I think the story was that he didn't really want to be associated with these people that he had seen in the news, and last minute pulled out. We don't have anybody to host the convention. We think you're funny. We'd like you to host a show. We'll pay you, give you a hotel room, and you will not be introduced by the master of ceremonies. Now, everyone, let's say it together, because you will
be
the
the
master
master of
ceremonies. Okay. We need to work on that. It's like those crowd what do they call when a bunch of people get together and they sing all together? What's that called? I forgot. A crowd mob, a mob with a crash mob, a flash mob,
flash mob. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, right.
Days, yeah.
Right. So we need to. You'll cut all that out. Okay. We need a flash mob so we learn how to say it all together. So yeah. So I became the master of ceremonies. And as a result, I said, I'm going to be a big shot and I think I can make some money. And I talked to some people and honed that routine, set up a time to record it. I was in college. They gave me the stage, the theater room for free. And I said, well, if I invite my friends to this, some people think I'm funny, and some people may not be Star Trek fans and not get the gags. So I called Al Schuster and said, Al, I want to cut a record. He said, that's great. I said, but I don't think everybody at college here is going to know all the gags, all the lines, all the jokes because they're very in. If you know Frankenstein, The Bride of Frankenstein and The Son of Frankenstein, Young Frankenstein is a terrifically funny movie. If you don't know those films, the movie is funny, but not as funny as it can be
Yeah.
had you if you have those references. So I said, can you send out a letter if I write something to your mailing list? And if they bring the letter, they'll get into the show. And he said, absolutely. So I actually had an audience from Star Trek fans. So the whole audience, except for a couple of family and friends and some of my friends from college, 98% of the people in that room, 300 or so people, were Star Trek fans. And that's exactly what I needed. So when I did the routine and we recorded it, they left at all the right places. And that would not have happened with a general audience. And that routine is called If We because of Shatner's, If We. And it was sold on 45 RPM records. And I didn't make a lot of money, but we sold a bunch, and I still had some left.
Oh, that's
And what Hercules?
no, I said that's really cool. It's
Oh, it was cool to have a vinyl record with the big
yeah.
hole in the middle. And we sold at a convention, and when I wasn't on stage, I'd go to the dealer's room and autograph it. My college nickname was Heesh. That's a story for my memoir. It has nothing to do, by the way, with drugs or marijuana, which I was in Marijuana Minutes, by the way, but it has nothing to do with either of those things. It was just a nickname, and that's what the record is under. So now with the 60th anniversary, and I wasn't in 1966, I was, 11 years old, so I wasn't on the show. But in 1975 is when I recorded the record, actually recorded it the year before, or at the end of 74, like December. And we released it at the 1975 fourth annual Al Schuster International Star Trek Convention. I think I got that. Cran Mars, delicious mystery appetizer. I think Norton makes a mistake when he says that. Anyway, I think that's the right order. And they released the record at the convention, and that was 1975 in January. So this January, Lisa worked herself off. I won't say the other word. She worked it. She worked it off and got the record on all the streaming services for the 51st anniversary of the recording. The thing that we were able to digitize it, take out most of the clicks and scratches and things, and it sounded pretty clear. I said, my voice sounds different. I pronounce planet because I hadn't gone to speech therapy yet, and it's got a different feel to it. I said, instead of trying to hide the fact that this is not some new record being released on Spotify and Apple Music, that it's really an old record. So after it was cleaned up, Bob, the engineer and I went into the sound library and selected static, needle drops, pops, and clicks. And when we put it together, when you
Oh, wow.
when you li when you listen to it, it starts out with click click click, and then you hear the needle drop, and then it goes into the routine. At the end of that routine, the Star Trek, the If We routine, it goes to side two. So you'll hear at the end of side one the click 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 click, from the needle. Then
Retro sound.
you
Yeah.
hear it. You hear another needle drop. So now you know you're on side two because you don't really have to flip over your computer or your phone. And it goes to side two, and then you hear we put the static very, 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 very low on the track. And if I'm talking, you don't hear it. But if I pause for a moment, like to mug, when I was doing it live, it gets
Hmm.
quiet. It gets quiet, and you hear the record static. And then at at the end of it, you hear the click, 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 click at the end of the record, and that's what we did. The record is called "If We," and there it is.
Hmm.
Can you see that clearly? And
Yeah.
the "If We" is Shatner, and that is on pretty much every streaming service. There's another thing I have here. They made up business cards for me. There's a
Oh,
business card.
wow.
Okay, so
Nice.
it's on all of those and more. And if you go on to the Spotify, it doesn't cost you anything. If you really like it, and I hope you do, we made the record 69 cents because Star Trek went into syndication in 1969. So 69 cents is all you're going to pay to keep it in your library. So do that.
Wow.
One of the nicest things that I have with this is on the record, Susan Sackett, who was Gene Roddenberry's executive assistant and a dear friend for all those years, gave me a quote, and it says, "Classic Stephen Heesh Lance, uh, funny with spot-on impersonations of Star Trek TOS actors, especially Shatner, Kirk, and Takei Sulu." And then it says her name, Susan Sackett, who is the was the executive assistant to Gene Roddenberry. And for her to do that for me, Susan, I know you're listening, and I just want to thank you for doing that. But thank you for being my friend for all those years, and we've never
Mhm.
stopped. So Susan is the one who made that phone call to me when I got invited to be an alien in Star Trek: The Motion Picture. In fact, I don't know if you have a picture of it. I think I have something
I
here.
was
I
going
can.
to dig that out,
Oh,
but
I got
I knew
something
you would
handy.
bring it.
I didn't have it ready because I wasn't sure if you had on camera. So what they wanted to do, what Roddenberry, Gene wanted to do, was say thank you to fans and people that kept Star Trek, going during those times. And there's a lot of people that he invited. And I got the phone call from I guess it was Susan Sackett that called me. And it was something that I will never forget. This is uh,
Mm.
this is me in the Star Trek movie. That's me in the middle, Scotty Yeoman Rand.
Mm.
And the story behind that is because I did all of those conventions. I mean, I did conventions for 8 years. I knew not just the actors, but I knew the makeup people. I knew Freddie Phillips, if you know him. And when I got on set, the first thing they did was sent me for a haircut and cut my sideburns pointed, cut my hair
Mhm.
shorter. I had long hair. Well, you saw the long hair on the. That's what I looked like.
You
That's
thought you
what.
were going to be a Vulcan, right? You.
Right. That's right. Oh, it's you remember the story about yeah. So that's how I
Yep.
looked when I went to Hollywood. So I said they cut my hair. They cut my hair in the William Shatner, Enterprise, crew haircut style with the pointed sideburns. And I said, why don't you cut my hair, Freddie? Why don't you cut it? I have black hair. You can cut me, make me a Vulcan, and then I go back to Freehold, New Jersey, and all my friends will know that I was a Vulcan in Star Trek. And Fred said, we have enough Vulcans for this scene. Uh, why don't you sit down? We need another bumphead. And I go, what the hell's a bumphead? And I know I can say hell, Bob, because
Mhm.
Shatner said it in the City on the Edge
Yeah.
of Forever. It was the first time that word was ever said on television.
Yeah.
So he said, Captain, the ship is the Enterprise is there. And he goes, let's get the hell out of here. He just barely said hell. And we
Yeah.
had never heard the word hell. And the TV said, you can't rewind it. He go, did Captain Kirk say hell? I mean, it was amazing. It was a big deal.
Yeah.
So you also see that I have a mustache back then,
Yep.
and I'm sitting in the makeup chair, and they cut my hair very short, cut my beautiful sideburns off completely because they have to glue in the plastic, makeup. Show the picture again.
Yeah.
They gotta glue
Make
in
you a
the
vegan.
make me a vegan, and then they're putting the rubber head on me, and they're getting ready, and Freddie Phillips is walking around looking at all the makeup artists making aliens for the scene, and he comes over to me and says, "Oh, by the way, Stevie, bump heads don't have mustaches. We didn't know. I didn't know I was a Ronderite till I saw it on a wiki somewhere. So it was years later. I used to say I was a vegan because I thought I was from the planet
Yeah.
Vega. That's what they had told me. Anyway, Freddie said that bump heads don't have mustaches, and in 2 seconds they shaved the mustache off and then put Hollywood cake makeup on to match the skin tones. And talk about stinging. Yeah, it stung. But I muscled through it and did the scene, and it was really special. The head, because I wasn't the head bump head. The head bump head was my friend. Now, it wasn't then, but Billy Van Zandt played the alien on the bridge, and
Hmm.
he was the new alien, and they cast several different molds from Billy's head, so
Yeah,
it
because he had
wasn't
the eyes. He had the,
he
the
Billy had the they were like tiger eyes. It was really cool.
yeah.
They were full contacts. I didn't have that, but the head piece was molded for Billy's head. So
Hmm.
it didn't fit exactly right. His head's a little bit, different shape than mine. And you talk about, how tough it is, Bob, to walk in somebody else's shoes. Well,
Mm.
imagine walking in someone else's head. That's what
But to be sitting there and having this makeup put on you, um, despite how, you know, maybe uncomfortable it was, you must have been sitting there so excited. Like you're sitting here like this is a dream come
it
true. I am an alien in a Star Trek the very first Star Trek motion picture ever,
it,
and
it,
it's bringing the crew back, reuniting, what we all wanted is to see them back. And you must have been just like, this is heaven. Like,
it was, but there's two sides to it. One, I really want that was the start of my acting career,
hmm.
and I never fooled around. Even certainly then I didn't fool around, but even today when I do a film, very rarely am I in the outtakes unless somebody else goofs up during a take. I don't make jokes or fool around. You know the blooper reel, the Star
No, I
Trek
wouldn't
blooper reel?
think you would, but I imagine
No,
you were
yeah,
sitting in the chair, like all these thoughts and all these emotions are happening.
yeah. I did, which reminds me of another actor who was in a science fiction, the Space 1999, Martin Landau.
Hmm.
He had all the emotion from A to B, if you remember, in that show.
Hmm.
I was waiting for that.
Yeah.
But really, it was very exciting. But the makeup is more comfortable than you expect it to be, and
Hmm.
you don't realize after a little while that you even have it on. And I remember being on the set, and an attractive extra walks by, and hey, how are you? How you doing? And she looks at
Mhm.
me and runs away. And I go, oh, well, that's never happened to me before. And then I went to the washroom for a 10-1 and past the mirror and saw and saw the head and the makeup. I go, oh. So that was that. Yeah. So Shatner. So we did Star Trek: The Motion Picture, and I wanted to put a shout out. I don't like saying shout out. I want to give a compliment to Bill. Uh, People, he takes a lot of heat from people about whether he's a good actor, whether he's not a good actor. He's an amazing actor. And I'm going to tell you one scene in Star Trek: The Motion Picture that is probably the best piece of acting that I have seen, and I don't know that I could ever do it. And he doesn't say a word. Do you know what scene I'm talking about, Bob?
Are you talking about when he's looking at the Enterprise, when all those his expression, just his look of awe of his ship and that he's coming back to it, and the joy and the like it's his ship and he's familiar with it, but he's not familiar with it. It's
Look
brand.
at his
It's like Christmas Day, it's coming back and getting your present, and looking at something both new and familiar at the same time.
watch his. You got it right. And I'm just
Mhm.
telling the fans out there, they go back and watch that scene, which is called the flyby when Scotty takes him on the
Flyby.
shuttlecraft. Is that right, Bob?
Yep, the
Yeah,
flyby. Yep.
flyby, and they take Bill Shatner, Kirk in the. I have trouble separating that. I'll tell you a funny
Yeah.
story. I'll tell you a funny story about a kid that couldn't separate the two either. So Kirk is in the shuttlecraft with Scotty. All right, that's correct.
Mhm.
And they're flying around, and then they look at the ship, and they have close-ups of Bill, and then they Kirk, and they show the
Mhm.
ship, and it comes around, and you see the words USS Enterprise, and look at the sparkle in his eyes. Look at the
Mhm.
emotion that he is showing you, the love of going back to this craft that he had not been on because they promoted him out of what he loved to do. I had a friend at the Asbury Park Press. She was a great writer, uh, and Gretchen Van Buteysen. You might know her. And Gretchen was a wonderful writer. And one day I went up and she wasn't in the writer's box. She was in a fancy, pod that they had. And I said, "What are you doing here?" She said, "Oh, I got a promotion. I'm an editor." I said, "That's great. Congratulations." She said, "Well, I couldn't turn down the money, but I really got into this business because I love to write." And
Right. Yeah.
when you're an
No
editor,
pun intended. Yeah.
yeah, and you know that, Bob, better than anyone because you do
Yes,
that.
because I've done both. I'm still doing both. I'm an assistant news editor, but at the same time, I'm still very much a reporter for a number of towns. And I couldn't do just the editing. I would want to be out there and, just
Right.
like in my own way, exploring and going to things and writing about things.
Exactly.
Yeah. And
Exactly, Bob.
mhm.
So she got promoted out of what she really loved.
Yeah.
And that happened to Captain Kirk. He got
Mhm.
promoted to Admiral, which is a wonderful position to be promoted to, but it's not where he was meant to be. And when they started, when I saw the film, well, certainly I was on the set and they introduced him, Admiral Kirk, and I go, it doesn't sound good.
Doesn't ring. Yeah.
Just didn't sound right. And I was so happy. And everybody was when he was demoted, you
Yeah.
know, for disobeying an order.
And by generations, he's learned that lesson well because he gives it back to Picard, say, don't let them promote you. Don't let them do anything to get you out of
Yeah,
that chair. Because while you're there, you can make a difference.
yeah, and he did. He saved the Earth and whales and the
Yep.
universe, and in some way saved my life and my career. Because had it not been for him and everybody else and Star Trek, I wouldn't be here talking to you about Star Trek and being on Star Trek and still watching Star Trek. Have you seen the new Star
Yes,
Trek?
yes. I have found it very intriguing and
I love
very
it.
very entertaining.
Yeah,
Like all the different Star Trek series, it's unique in its own way and it's special. And it also explores this new timeline that we're not familiar with, that between 700 and 900 years since, say, Picard season three. So a lot has happened. And I know some fans are like, we're picking apart things like seeing the Sharonian there and saying, well, they all died. Well, obviously they didn't, and there's a story there. So just be calm and wait for that story to find out, like really the only Sharonians, were Beale and Lokai. Um, when they went back to the world, of course there was, the Sharonians off planet at the time. So I mean, so that there's a cadet there. But no, I'm very excited about the series, and I think it's exploring things in a different way, and it's generally interesting. So
and I love there are so many homages to the
mhm.
earlier series,
Yeah.
and I love seeing, Cisco and Kirk's names are up there on boards, and it's wonderful to see that. And the thing that chokes me up every time I hear the original Alexander Courage theme, even if it's just 9 notes, 10 notes, it pulls me back into Star Trek, the original series that we
Well,
saw.
plus the theme opens with Elia's theme, like her song. The first several notes is that, and that just brought me back right away,
Yeah.
to Star
It's
Trek.
smart.
Yeah.
It's smart that they do that. And that connection, we are associated. Valentine's Day is coming up. And people have wonderful memories of meeting their girlfriend, their wife, their boyfriend, their husband, their
Hmm.
lovers. And it's not just, oh, I thought they were good looking or pretty. It's sometimes I remember a smell from the flowers when we're in the garden, or I remember a song that was playing. I remember a sound. So that sound is as emotional as anything else that humans can experience. So having those few notes of the original theme by Alexander Courage
Yes.
is an emotional tie that we can't even touch. And it brings us right back to what we love, and that's Star Trek.
And it's amazing that here we are, 60 years, technically in September, but I mean, we are
The
observing
60th
60
year.
years. I mean, I was debating on whether to wear tonight the t-shirt of the 25th anniversary t-shirt, which is still in good shape. I could still actually wear it, but it shows you like I'm keeping my t-shirts way too long, or am I,
Is the
because
shirt in good shape, or are you in good shape, Bob?
well, I think the shirt's in better shape than I am. I've put a few pounds in recent weekends, indulging, but
That was, yeah,
yeah, but
was
but
one of the, sorry.
but it was, out of all the anniversary shirts, and all the anniversaries, we've observed, Star Trek almost as much as our own anniversaries or birthdays. It's always been special, on Star Trek Day, and we always pause and think back to what would our life be like without the experience and enrichment that this show has provided. The themes, the thought-provoking storylines, the acting, the special effects too, and how they have evolved over the years, and just how it's touched us. I mean, we both have in common the fact that we have met our loved ones, our significant others, at conventions, at Star
At
Trek
conventions.
conventions.
I
Both of
know.
us.
And that's a story that I'll write in another book. But
Yeah.
the if we, is a you really, folks, you need to listen to it because it's funny. Now, if you're not, I mean, if you're watching Spaced Out, you're probably a Star Trek fan. But if you're not familiar enough with TOS, you may not get all the gags. I think you'll like the impressions. I think you'll get some of the jokes, but you'll say, that was cute, But if you know TOS, the original series, it's
Yes.
very fun. It's very funny because I'm really making fun of things that happen. But on side two, I do topical humor and talk about, well, my English teacher and my mom asking me for lunch, what I wanted for lunch. And if you've ever had a mom or an English teacher, I think you'll find side two funny, and you don't have to have any Star Trek experience to listen to side two. It's right after the clicks, after if we.
I think in my case, my mom probably both hated the fact that I love Star Trek that much and loved it all at the same time, because she was the one who finally consented. Because remember, in syndication, Channel 11, New York, had Star Trek on at, I think, 6 o'clock, right around dinner time, at least for us. And I wanted to go back into the living room because, of course, back then, that you had the living room TV. You didn't have TV, elsewhere, unless it was in a bedroom. But you, so finally she consented to, like, okay, you can have the TV tray. We'll bring the dinner will be out for you, and you can watch Star Trek. Which that was a big deal because I never thought she or my dad would go for that, because that was
So
family.
you got to watch it. Well, what happened, because I was old, I'm older than you, Bob, but I was watching Star Trek in college, and
Right.
same thing. Channel 11 had it on at 6 p.m. So a group of us would go to dinner. Like, I think dinner started at 5 o'clock, and we'd go to the 5 o'clock dinner, and pretty much everybody came later, so we didn't have a long line. We rushed through the line, wolfed down the food, and then one of the upperclassmen on campus, they had townhouses. If you were an upperclassman, if you were, a B or higher student, you could actually live in a townhouse instead of a dorm room. And we would, get dinner done about 5:45, and then run over to his townhouse, and we would all watch Star Trek from 6 to 7, and then it was off to study, library, home, whatever you had to do. But so I watched it all through college at Brian's townhouse. Yeah.
And all the people that we have come into our lives because of Star Trek, like
Yeah.
professionally, both, through writers and people like that. Yeah, certainly yourself, and people I've interviewed over the years, but also fellow fans that have become friends, and we have become close to beyond Star Trek, through other interests and fun activities and stuff like that. That's what ended up having me become part of fandom. I didn't know, I knew there were lots of Star Trek fans back then, but I never imagined that I would become part of a club, much less run one and become so intrinsically involved in an international organization like Starfleet. So it's amazing. It really is. I'm still
Yeah.
in awe of it.
I will talk about how we met, but
Mhm.
you're
Yeah, that's
you're
right. You were the
you're
guest,
right.
of
You're
the very first Starfleet Region 7 conference. Yeah.
what year was that, Bob?
1993.
93. So we've known each other. Somebody quickly do the math. And since
Yeah.
93, that Bob and I have known each other. And you've now gone through the ranks, and you're now an admiral, are you not? You're a
Yeah, but
commodore.
I'm still the captain of the USS Challenger,
Okay.
which formed in 1988, and I've been the only captain or chapter chairman, if you want to be official, but although official is captain. So I still feel like I'm a captain in some ways, and
That's good because I was going to tell you to stay in that chair because you can do so much good for. Never mind.
yeah.
Don't let them promote you. Yeah. My favorite Commodore is of course Decker. Um,
Yes,
my favorite episode. My favorite episode.
a gripping episode, absolutely
And
gripping, and
it,
and you just feel bad for him. He's
it it's Moby Dick. It says
yeah.
says it was there, Jim. It was there. What it says? Where is your crew, Matt? Where is your crew? I beamed them down. I beamed them. Where? Where did you beam them? I beamed them to the third planet, Jim. Matt, there is no third planet. Don't you think I know that? It was there, but not anymore. I love that scene. I love all of the scene. He's
William
absolutely
Wyndham was just, no matter what I would see him in afterwards, it was always like, "Hey, it's Commodore Decker. It's Commodore Decker." I mean, whatever he was in, and then to finally meet him at shore leave, and just, on a Friday night when there was not a lot of fans there, and just to walk up and casually talk to him about not Star Trek. I opened up with an old TV pilot he did with Donna Mills in the 1970s, where he played a doctor and she played a doctor, like a female doctor, which was like a new thing at that point. And he was like stunned that, like, you remember that? You,
they appreciate that too. They appreciate,
yeah,
no,
yeah.
when I did Star Trek the motion picture, and I'm on the big set, the recreation deck scene, and we had a break. I got to talk to Bob Weiss, to Robert Weiss, and
Uh,
one of the reasons Bob was selected to direct Star Trek the motion picture was because he directed The Day the Earth Stood Still, and you would think that during that few moments that I had to talk to the director of Star Trek, the motion picture, and The Day the Earth Stood Still, that I would talk about The Day the Earth Stood Still with him. But I always had something in the back of my mind that bothered me about another film that he directed, which had nothing to do with science fiction. He directed The Sound of Music. And
yeah.
I I remember watching it as a kid. I actually got straight A's, and my parents took me to the Paramount Theater in Asbury Park, and I got to
Wow.
see on the big screen, yeah, The Sound of Music at the Paramount. So I didn't like this one scene when they have the wedding and they show the church, and then the camera starts moving up, and then they cut to the outside of the church, and cinematically, because I do direct too sometimes. I said I didn't like the going to the outside, the inside of the church, and then the camera moving and then cut. It was to me too jarring. And I said, Bob,
Choppy.
yeah, I said, Bob, why didn't you dissolve to the outside? I thought it would have been a nicer, cinematic move. And then Robert Weiss, explained to me why. He said because the dissolve takes a certain number of seconds to transform from or transfer from one scene to the next. And I didn't want it to be any longer than a certain length of time. And the dissolve would have taken it's actually across dissolve, meaning from the inside of the church to
Yeah.
the outside. And he says across dissolve would have taken too long. And that's why I decided to do a cut. And I stand corrected and learned about film directing from Robert Wise. So
Wow.
there's why the Sound of Music has a cut and not a cross dissolve. And I didn't get to ask anything about Gort. I'm sorry.
Wow. That's a great story.
Thanks.
Yeah. Just,
I had wonderful moments with these people. And you forgot to ask me where I stayed, Bob.
oh, that's right. I knew you would be bringing that up. I mean,
Ah,
that
yeah.
that was an adventure all by itself, and right up to dinner, which I know you'll tell us about.
Well, what happened was I get the call from Susan Sackett to appear in the film. Thank you again, my dear friend. And I was very excited. I had known James Doohan, Scotty, Jimmy, if you're in the in crowd, if you have the all access pass. And Jimmy, I had to call him and say, Jimmy, guess what? I'm going to be in a Star Trek movie. I'm coming out to California. I'm going to get to see you on the set. And he said, no, you're not. And by the way, he didn't say, no, you're not, lad. He doesn't really talk that way. No, you're not. He said, no,
He's
you're not.
Canadian, or
Yeah.
he was Canadian.
Yeah, he's Canadian. So I said, what do you mean? He said, why don't you tell me where you're staying and tell me your itinerary, and I will pick you up at the airport and you will stay with me and the family during filming. So not only, and he was always my favorite Star Trek. I mean, everyone loves Shatner, Captain
Yeah.
Kirk. Okay, so Kirk has to be, but of the other crew members, Scotty was my favorite. To
Yeah.
think that I got to meet him and then got to be friends with him and then got to stay at his home for a whole
Hmm.
week
Wow.
was one of the most unbelievable experiences, maybe more exciting than making a movie, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would imagine.
So
Such a nice man. He was always friendly, always uh, open to the fans, and would listen to them. And he was remarkable.
yeah, he was, and I miss him. I miss all of them. Uh, I have stories, obviously, about each one. I hosted those conventions for almost a dozen years, and about 8 or 9 different conventions during that time. Some years they had a convention twice a year. I would do one in New York in January, like Al Schuster's, and then maybe around September, Labor Day weekend, they would have another one. So I would do two in a year, and I did, I said nearly a dozen conventions, maybe in that 8 year period. So I got to know everybody. I mean, the writers, the directors, the actors, the crew. I got friendly with Grace Lee Whitney, as you know
That's
from
who I was going to bring up next if you didn't, but I knew you would.
yeah. Well, that
Gorgeous woman.
when they were taking this publicity picture, uh,
Hmm.
Grace Gracie was friends not only with me but also friends with Jimmy, and when they were taking these pictures, which we only had a few minutes in between takes when they were doing the publicity shots, uh, usually it was they get one of the cast members and then one of the extras or the alien, whatever they were doing, and they were setting me up for the shot with Scotty, Jimmy Doohan, James Doohan, and Grace saw that they were posing me and said, "I want to be in Stevie's picture too," and
Oh,
I believe that I am the only one that got publicity pictures from that day that have two of the main cast members
wow.
and not just one. If you go online, you might see others with one or the other, but I'm the only one that has three. And the nice story is that because they were friends, and I know you could read all the the dirt about Star Trek, and I don't.
Mm.
People ask me about things like that, and I said, I only care about what happens when the red light is on. The red light is
Yeah.
goes on the camera or outside the sound stage. There's you remember the Andy Griffith show, the police light that on the it looks like that. And they
Yeah.
when they're ready to start shooting, the door is closed and they flip a switch and that red, bubble light spins and you can't come in or out of the sound stage until that scene is done. And I care about what they do when that red light is spinning, meaning their work, their acting, their what they do. And when they go home, unless I know them, I don't follow,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
Inquirer news. I don't have an
Yeah.
inquiry mind. So if you read those stories, you'll see some of the cast members liked each other, some didn't like each other, some
Mm.
I don't care about that. They were all wonderful to me, all of them. Okay, so I have no bad stories about any of them. Okay, nobody was mean, nobody was nasty. Everybody liked me, and I certainly loved all of them. Well, Grace and I got to be friends because she came to convention, and Jimmy and Grace were friends. And one day, because I was in California staying with the Dewins, she said, "Why don't you come over to the house for dinner with me and Jack Dale, her husband?"
Mhm.
And I said, "Sure." Jim said, "Sure, let's go." So we all went over to Grace Lee Whitney's house for dinner, and she made spaghetti and meatballs.
Mm.
And Bob, to this day, that is the benchmark of spaghetti and meatballs. Okay. They were, and I don't know whether it was because Grace Lee Whitney cooked them or they were really as good as I think they were. And I think that's the answer. They were really that damn
They were
good.
good.
Okay.
Yeah.
They were that good. And I've never ever reached that bar when I've tried to cook them myself. She just had a magic in the kitchen, not just on stage or on camera.
Mm.
And that's one of the fondest memories that I have of being with Grace Lee Whitney, not on the set or at a Star Trek convention, but having meatballs and spaghetti at her house. And great experience. Great experience.
She was a fantastic lady, and I sometimes wish that they had kept her on other seas. I mean, I understand they wanted Kirk to be on the prowl with other women, but uh,
Yeah, that's what happened.
that was pretty much primarily. But it would have been interesting to see her evolve as a character, as a yeoman. I mean, we know that she did. She became a transporter chief. We know she eventually became a communications chief, possibly the first officer of the Excelsior, depending on, if you read the novels or what. It was really cool to watch her, you know, make appearances, even how brief they were in some of the motion pictures that came out after the motion picture.
Yeah, I'm glad they did. I'm glad
Yeah.
that's such a big thank you because like as you said, she was only in the first season and the reason was terrible, but I understand what they tried to do with the story. So Kirk couldn't go down to a planet and
Yeah.
then meet, an alien female and kind of fall in love and and then come back on the ship and have his main squeeze on the ship. It didn't look good.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
because of that, they had to ask her to step down, and I'm sorry they did because she was just great. And if you think about it, and fans at conventions also, it the way we think about Yeoman Rand is we think she was in every episode. She made that big of an impact on the show that
Yeah.
it's hard to think that she wasn't in that episode. It's like she was always there somewhere in my mind.
Yeah. Well, she was so ingrained in the chemistry of the bridge crew, early on, and as fans, we just didn't want to let go. Same thing with O'Reilly. He sang. So, but
When we
Chekhov.
did
But we remember Chekhov more, of course. But
Well, that's right. It's an alien and winter. It's a little invented by a little old lady from Lemongrad. What
Leningrad.
Lemongrad? You talk about Bruce Hyde singing. I was just talking to Lisa the other day about this. And yes, when he came to the convention, it's just like the film Galaxy Quest when they had to keep asking the alien to repeat the line for Balfar's revenge. He had to say the same line, and at every show that Bruce did, he had he had to sing
Take
"Take Me
me
Home
home.
Again, Kathleen." He had to do that.
Okay.
And I want you to know that I actually got to go out with Bruce for dinner. He came to New York and he wanted to have Korean food, which back now there's Korean restaurants everywhere, and I go to Korean foods and Vietnamese food. It was a big deal to find a Korean restaurant. We found one in New York, and we had Korean food. And he ordered, I think, octopus or squid, and I was like Bart Simpson and turned green when I didn't like the squid, but I did have dinner with him. I asked if he you know could change the menu, but he didn't. I know you're getting towards the end, and there was a couple of things
Yeah. So plug,
I
or,
wa-
plug what you can and give
yeah, I have a
your
couple of things I
contact
wanted to.
information.
Well, one of the things that I wanted to say. First, am I allowed to promote an upcoming appearance on another podcast because on another network? In the old days, in the old days, there was only CBS, ABC, and NBC. And if you were on the Tonight Show on NBC, you say, "Yeah, I'm on a show. It's on another network." You couldn't say the other
Yeah, I
network.
remember Johnny saying.
Right. So I will be sometime in March doing a program with a dear friend of mine. His name's is Chubsy Thunder Road, and the podcast is not even up yet. It's called The Lounge Effect, AFFECT, and I'll be on there. And I've got to have Hercules get in touch, or I will put Chubsy in touch with him because I read this today that they're coming up. The Mount Olympus is presenting the UFO entity enigma, and the topic is Atlantis. Well, Chubsy is not only an expert on UFOs, he wrote a book called Behind the Cosmic Curtain: Humanity's Hidden Origins and Cosmic Connections. And I'll get you a copy of the book, Bob, and Hercules too.
Thank you.
And you've got to get him on the show because you're going to
Yeah.
connect like that, and it will blow you away. He said that if your viewers, you are into alien lore, UFOs, and a deep dive into paranormal activity, I think Chubsy's book will not only intrigue you, but it'll blow you away because it completely flips the script on what we know about history. It's crazy. So check your local TV guide listings for time and channel when that's coming up. So that's my plug. Thank you for letting me do that, and I think you'll enjoy them. Also, want to thank some people. Certainly want to a whole bunch of people. The If We would not have been possible or get me here if that didn't happen. My showbiz career, from If We to Woody Allen's Stardust Memories to Marijuana Minutes. I'm going to be in the Bro Ship coming out this year, I think. And there's another film that I'm going to be doing with Tiffany Haddish. If you know the comedian Tiffany Haddish, I spoke to the director the other day,
Awesome.
and they have a scene for me. So I'm going to get to meet and work with Tiffany Haddish, the very, very funny comedian, and she looks like a lovely lady to work with. I want to thank my high school chum, Barry Presser. Barry, thank you for pushing me up on stage during the talent show. I had no idea that encouragement was going to lead me to Bob Vosseller and Spaced Out here today, 51 years later. So thanks, Barry. I want to thank Al Schuster for giving me that first job as a convention host. And then John Townsley, who took over with the TriStar conventions after Al. For another 7 years, I got to host those conventions. Kurt Hewlett is the one who actually recorded If We. So thank you, Kurt. I know you moved away from the area, and I met your nephew, and I'm so sorry that you're not here, but thank you for recording the original If We. And Rudy Meyer, my current producer, who helped me digitize If We in the studio, put in the sound effects. Rudy, you're a genius. You know how to put. All I do is stand in a little glass room in Rudy's studio. Woody the Wabbit. Woody the Wabbit. No, that's me. That's meatballs. That's meatballs with Bill Murray. I stand in a little room with a glass window and look into there, and all I have to do is talk into a microphone, and Rudy pushes all the buttons. So thank you for that. Lisa Warder, my publicist at Noodlehead Productions, and my main squeeze are Hercules, you, and Bob, longtime friend Bob, since when was that convention?
93.
93. Uh,
Oh my
it
God.
seems like yesterday, and we've been friends ever since. And Bob is the one who actually orchestrated my engagement to Lisa, and something that I will never forget. Bob, we'll talk about that maybe another day.
Yeah, that was
And,
wonderful.
and then, of course, everybody listening at home, whether you're at home, you're in your car, at your girlfriend's house, or if you're still living in your mom's basement, thanks for listening to. That's it. I'm out.
All right. Oh, we actually have 5 minutes more, so we could
Okay, I want to thank Barry Presser for pushing me on stage. I want to thank. Oh, never mind, never mind. Okay, ask me. Go ahead.
tell us how how we could follow along with you and your
I
career
am.
and your website and your
Yeah, I am on all. I'm all. My publicist has me on all the big social media. My favorite is Facebook because I know how to work it. So I will write back to you on Facebook. I am on Instagram, IG, and all the others, but I have no clue how to work it. Lisa puts all the posts up. But If We is a comedy record, and I am doing another record in March, but it has nothing to do with comedy. I am going into the music. I've always wanted to do music, Bob. And
really.
I'm going, yes, I'm going to have, this is not a joke, and follow me for this, folks. I am going to have a country western. It's actually called a trucking country song, which
I
is a,
read that. Yeah.
yes, it's a country western song that it's a cover. I don't call it a cover, it's a reimagine because I'm telling he told the story as a young man and I'm doing my cowboy voice. And because of that, I sound too old to be picked up as a hitchhiker. I'll give you a little bit of the voice. Like that. I was hitchhiking. I was about 15 or 16 years old and got picked up by a trucker. And well, we had a great time and the story goes on from there. It's not an original story. It's not my original story. It's based on a real story performed by a singer back in the 1970s. I've had to reimagine some of the lyrics to bring them up to date because I can't say I'm an old man hitchhiking. What the hell is this guy doing? Is this hitchhiking?
Yeah.
So because he told the story as a young man, so I have to say
Right.
when I was 15 or 16, I went out west and it didn't work out, and I hitchhiked back, and I tell the story that way. And by the way, the secret is, Bob, I can't sing. So how am I doing a country song? Because it's one of those country songs where you tell the story and
Yeah.
there's guitar picking and banjo fiddling going on behind me, but I'm just telling a story as the kid that, or the young man that was when I was a kid get picked up by the trucker. So I'm going to tell that story as if I was looking back, but I'm not going to sing not one single note in this song. However, we're already talking about another follow-up where I am going to sing a couple of notes, just a couple, but I think I can hit them. So that's
Great.
so
All
yeah,
right.
so whole new career. I'm pretty sure I'm not gonna do it as Stephen Lance because it's not a cowboy enough sound. I think I'm gonna bill myself as Lance Stevens. So when that comes out, you'll Lance
Okay.
Stevens.
That
That's
sounds country. Yeah.
that very
Thanks,
country, Lance
Stevens.
Stevens. Yeah, so I'm going to be Lance Stevens, and I'll have that country song, and that'll be out there. And it's coming out in May because that's when the original recording was released in 1970s,
Awesome.
in May. So I'm doing that homage
Cool.
in May. And I don't know. Usually you rush me off, and I actually got through everything, Bob.
Yeah. Well, thanks again for joining us. And you're always a wealth of talent and knowledge, and you always bring something incredible to the table here. So we love having you. Of course, I can be reached through beamaboard at AOL.com. Yeah, I'm still on AOL. I've got other emails, but that's the easiest one to remember.
Bob,
USChallenger.org.
I got to interrupt you, Bob. I am also on AOL, and we're both so old. When we got in, it was only AO. That's because I was.
Yeah.
Go ahead, do the rest. Good, good, good.
And USSChallenger.org. And of course, you want to find out more about Starfleet, SFI.org. There's probably a chapter near you. So, 60 years Star Trek, and we're still trekking along and having fun. So, thanks again, Hercules, for hosting, allowing me to do Spaced Out. I
Well,
appreciate it.
thank you for creating such a wonderful show and having such wonderful guests. Thank you, Stephen. You're
Thanks.
always a wonderful and welcome guest on the show. And I too met Bob at a Star Trek convention back it was in the mid 80s, I believe, at the Creation Convention in New York City. And my wife and she used to write for a magazine I had. I had a Klingon magazine at the time called Void Warrior. So she was one of the first people who contributed to my magazine. So that's how we connected. So
Mhm.
yes, those conventions are very important to our lives and enhance our life through the people we meet. So thanks to both of you for being awesome. And thanks to our audience for tuning in. Until next time, this is us wishing you joyous journeys and amazing adventures. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thanks, Herc.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Thanks.
And we're out.
Almost.
Almost.
Okay, and we're out.
Now we're out. I found the button.